He shielded an alien child from the beast. Days later, her mother's army came for him. The Razorback's tracks told Cole Rayner everything he needed to know about how this morning would end. 3 toes instead of 4 on the left foreleg meant injured, and injured meant desperate. He knelt in the damp soil, fingers tracing the depression where the creature's weight had pressed deepest. Blood marked the moss beside the track. Not much, but enough. He stood slowly, his knees protesting, 32 years old and already feeling 40. That's what happened when you stopped caring whether you lived or died. The colony administration paid him in credits and left him alone, which was all he wanted. Track the predators, file reports, stay out of sight. The sound reached him before he understood what he was hearing. A child's voice, high and frightened, speaking in a language that wasn't standard. Cole moved toward the voice, keeping low, and saw her. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6, her skin a deep blue that absorbed the filtered sunlight. Pointed ears rose from midnight blue hair, and she wore fitted clothing far too advanced for anything the colony produced. She was backing away from something Cole couldn't see yet, her small hands raised. The girl stumbled over a root and fell, and the Razorback emerged from the undergrowth. 6 legs ending in claws designed to rend and tear. Scaled hide over corded muscle, a wedge-shaped head with too many teeth. The blood trail had led Cole right to it, and now it had found easier prey. Cole didn't think he ran. The Razorback's head swiveled toward him as he crashed through the undergrowth. It calculated the threat, human, unarmed, smaller by at least 200 kilos. Not a threat at all. It turned back toward the girl. Cole grabbed a fallen branch as thick as his forearm and swung it like a club, catching the creature across its hindquarters. The wood splintered on impact, and the Razorback's roar shook water from the leaves overhead. It spun with terrifying speed, and Cole threw himself sideways. "Run!" he shouted at the girl. She didn't move. Her eyes locked on the Razorback, wide with terror, frozen. He'd seen it before in soldiers during their first engagement, the moment when the brain stopped processing. The Razorback charged. Cole met it head-on, ducking under the snapping jaws and driving his shoulder into the creature's chest. They went down together, and Cole felt something tear across his ribs. Sharp, hot, immediate. He got his hands around the Razorback's throat and squeezed. The creature thrashed, its rear legs raking across his thighs and stomach. Blood ran into his eyes, his grip was slipping, and he could feel his strength draining. The girl screamed something in her language, and the Razorback's head jerked toward the sound. Cole released his grip and rolled, grabbing another branch with a broken end sharp enough to qualify as a spear. When the Razorback came for him again, he braced the branch against a tree root and let the creature's own charge impale it. The impact jarred through his arms. The Razorback shrieked and thrashed once, twice, then went still. Cole collapsed beside it, gasping. Everything hurt, blood soaked through his clothes, metallic in his mouth. Small hands touched his face. He opened his eyes and found the girl kneeling beside him, her expression a mixture of wonder and concern. She said something soft and urgent, and Cole managed to shake his head. "It's okay," he said. "You're okay." She pressed her hands against the worst of his wounds, and Cole felt unexpected warmth spread from her touch. Not healing, but something that dulled the edges of the pain just enough to think. Footsteps crashed through the undergrowth, Colonial security, finally. Jace Hamilton reached them first, his weapon drawn but lowering when he saw the dead Razorback. His eyes went from the creature to Cole to the girl, and Cole watched his former teammate's expression shift through surprise, confusion, and something that looked almost like fear. "Jesus, Cole," Jace said, kneeling beside him. "What the hell did you do?" "Saved her," Cole managed. "What does it look like?" Jace looked at the girl, really looked at her, and his face went pale. "Do you have any idea who this is?" Cole tried to answer, but the world was fading at the edges. The girl's hands were still pressed against his wounds, and he could hear her voice, distant and echoing. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Jace's expression. Not concern for Cole's injuries, but something deeper, something that looked like dread. Cole woke to white walls and the antiseptic smell of a medical facility. His body felt like it had been taken apart and poorly reassembled. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Easy," Jace said from somewhere to his left. "You've got about 30 stitches holding you together." Cole turned his head slowly and found his former squad mate sitting in a chair beside the bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "The girl," Cole said, his voice rough. "She okay?" "She's fine. Better than fine. She's with her guardian now, and they've been asking about you every hour." Something in Jace's tone made Cole's instincts prickle. He'd served with Jace for 6 years before everything went to hell, and he knew that particular brand of carefully neutral delivery. "What is it?" Cole asked. Jace leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "That kid you saved? Her name is Kessa. Her mother commands the Valorian Reach." The name meant nothing for a moment, and then memory supplied the context. The Valorian Reach wasn't a place, it was a fleet. The galaxy's most feared mercenary force, responsible for ending 3 wars through sheer, overwhelming violence. "Shit," Cole said. "Yeah," Jace agreed. "And it gets better. Their law says that anyone who saves a commander's child without using weapons is either claimed as a mate or executed to preserve honor. No middle ground." Cole stared at him. "You're joking." "I really wish I was." Alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and Cole could hear shouting from the corridor. Jace stood, moving to the window, and his shoulders went rigid. "Cole," he said quietly, "you need to see this." Cole forced himself out of the bed and joined Jace at the window. The view looked out over the colony's main landing field, and what he saw there made his breath catch. Ships, dozens of them, descending through the atmosphere in formation that spoke of military discipline and overwhelming force. Sleek and predatory, their hulls marked with symbols that glowed with their own light. "She's coming for you," Jace said. "And from the look of that fleet, she's not taking no for an answer." The ships landed with precision that made the colony's usual traffic look like amateur hour. Syrinx's flagship touched down first, its landing struts extending with hydraulic smoothness. The others formed a perimeter, blocking every exit from the landing field. Cole watched from the medical facility window as the cargo ramp descended. Her troops deployed with no wasted movement, every position calculated for maximum tactical advantage. They wore armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal and carried weapons that hummed with contained energy. Then she appeared. Syrinx stepped into the sunlight, and Cole's breath caught. She was taller than he'd expected, maybe 6 feet, with the same deep blue skin as her daughter, but marked with patterns that looked almost like bioluminescent tattoos running down her arms. Her ears were more pronounced than Kessa's, swept back like a predator's, and her eyes, even from this distance, he could feel the weight of her gaze. She moved like violence contained in skin. Her soldiers parted automatically, and Cole recognized the body language. This was someone whose authority didn't need reinforcement. "She's headed this way," Jace said. "Security's trying to establish protocols, but she's not waiting." The door to Cole's room opened without warning. Syrinx filled the doorway, and up close she was even more striking. The patterns on her skin pulsed with faint light that seemed to respond to her heartbeat, and her eyes were amber that shouldn't exist in nature. Behind her, a smaller figure in robes that looked woven from starlight stepped into view. An older female, her skin paler than Syrinx's, with markings covering nearly every visible inch. "Leave us," Syrinx said, her voice carrying an accent that turned standard into something musical and dangerous. Jace looked at Cole, who nodded. His former teammate left, positioning himself just outside the door. Syrinx crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped at the foot of Cole's bed. Her eyes traveled over him with clinical efficiency, cataloging the bandages, the bruises, the evidence of what the Razorback had done. "You are Cole Rayner," she said. "You saved my daughter's life. I did what anyone would do." Something flickered across her expression. Surprise, maybe disbelief. "No," she said. "You did what no one else has done in 3 generations. You faced a Razorback without weapons and survived." She moved closer, and Cole became acutely aware that he was sitting in a medical gown with most of his torso wrapped in bandages. Syrinx reached out, her fingers tracing the edge of the bandage across his ribs. Her touch was surprisingly gentle. "These wounds," she said softly, "you earned them protecting Kessa. They'll heal." "Yes," she agreed. "But the debt will not." The older female stepped forward. "I am Priestess Amara," she said. "I serve as spiritual advisor to Commander Syrinx. What you have done has triggered one of our oldest laws." Cole looked from Amara to Syrinx, whose expression had gone carefully neutral. "The one about claiming or executing," he said. "Your friend explained." "Then you understand the position you are in," Syrinx said. Her hand was still resting against his ribs, and Cole could feel heat radiating from her palm. "I understand you have a problem," Cole said. "And I'm guessing you didn't bring a fleet just to thank me." Syrinx's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Perceptive. General Torvan of the Valorian Command has been seeking my hand in a political union for 2 years. He arrived in orbit 3 hours after we did, claiming prior rights to any bonding ceremony." "Let me guess," Cole said. "He's not happy about the competition." "He believes you are not worthy," Amara said bluntly. "A human, disgraced by his own military, living in exile, to him you are an insult to Valorian honor." Cole felt the familiar shame twist in his gut, but he pushed it down. He's not wrong. Syrinx's hand tightened against his ribs, not enough to hurt, but enough to command his attention. Her eyes locked on his with an intensity that felt physical. "He is wrong," she said, each word crisp. "You fought a razorback with nothing but wood and will. You bled protecting a child that was not your own, not your species, knowing you would likely die. That is honor." Cole didn't know what to say to that. The door opened again, and Kessa burst into the room with boundless energy. She was cleaned up now, wearing fresh clothes, and when she saw Cole, her face lit up with pure joy. "Shield, father!" she cried in accented standard, launching herself at the bed. Syrinx caught her daughter mid-flight with reflexes that were almost too fast to follow, but her expression softened in a way that transformed her from warrior to mother. "Gently, Kessa," she said in her own language, then switched to standard. "He is still healing." Kessa nodded but reached out to touch Cole's hand, her small fingers curling around his. "You saved me," she said. "The beast was going to eat me, and you made it stop." "I'm just glad you're okay," Cole said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in a long time. Kessa looked up at her mother with complete certainty. "I like him," she announced. "He smells like safety." Syrinx's eyes met Cole's over her daughter's head, and something passed between them. An acknowledgement of the impossible situation, maybe, or recognition of the attraction neither of them wanted to feel. "Commander," Amara said quietly, "General Torvan has requested an audience. He will not wait much longer." Syrinx's jaw tightened, and Cole saw conflict play across her features. "What happens if you don't claim me?" Cole asked. "Torvan executes you as an insult to our laws," Syrinx said flatly, "and uses your death as justification to dissolve the human-Valorian alliance. He has been seeking a reason for war. And if you do claim me, then we undergo the bonding ritual, 7 days of ceremonies designed to test compatibility and strength. If we complete them, we are bound for life. If we fail—" She trailed off. Cole looked at Kessa, still holding his hand, then back at Syrinx. He thought about the razorback, about the moment he'd chosen to run toward danger. He thought about the 3 years he'd spent trying to disappear. "When do we start?" he asked. Syrinx's eyes widened fractionally. "You agree?" "I'm not letting some political general use me as an excuse to start a war," Cole said. "And I'm not letting him kill me without a fight." Amara's expression suggested she was reassessing him entirely, but Syrinx just nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Then it is decided," she said. "Amara, inform General Torvan that I will address him publicly in 1 hour." She turned back to Cole, and this time when she touched his face, her fingers traced the line of his jaw with something that wasn't entirely professional. "This is not a small thing you agree to," she said quietly. The ritual will push us both. It will demand intimacy, trust, vulnerability. If you have doubts, speak them now. Cole met her eyes and gave her the truth. I'm terrified, he said, but I'm done running from things that scare me. Syrinx's smile was small but genuine. Good, she said. Fear means you are taking this seriously. She straightened, her hand falling away from his face, and Cole felt the loss of her touch, like a physical thing. Rest now, she said. Tomorrow your life changes completely. The colony's central plaza had been converted into a ceremonial space in hours. Syrinx's people erected structures that looked grown rather than built, filling the air with lights that pulsed in rhythm with something Cole couldn't quite hear but could feel in his chest. He stood beside Syrinx on a raised platform, wearing clothing she'd provided, fitted but flexible. His wounds ached beneath the bandages, but he'd refused additional pain medication. General Torvan stood before them, flanked by his own honor guard. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, his blue skin marked with scars that looked deliberately cultivated. His eyes were the color of frozen seas, and they held nothing but contempt. This is your choice, Torvan said, his standard perfect but cold. This broken human? This is my right, Syrinx corrected, her voice carrying across the plaza. Cole Rayner saved my daughter according to the old ways. The law is clear. The law was written when warriors were worthy of the name, Torvan said. Not when humans played at heroism out of desperation. Cole felt his hands curl into fists, but Syrinx touched his arm lightly. Then let the ritual prove his worth, she said. Or do you fear the outcome? Torvan's expression darkened, and Cole saw murder in his eyes, but the general was trapped by the same laws he'd tried to use against them. Very well, Torvan said. 7 days. But know this, Commander, when he fails, and he will fail, the consequences will fall on your head. He turned and left, his guards following, and the tension that had held the crowd broke. Syrinx's shoulders dropped fractionally, the only sign of relief she allowed herself. She turned to Cole. It is done, she said. 7 days from now, we will be bonded or we will be dead. You keep saying that like it's supposed to scare me more, Cole said. Syrinx studied him for a long moment, then laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it did him. Perhaps, she said, I have chosen better than I knew. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining, and Cole felt the warmth of her skin. In front of the entire colony, in front of both their peoples, she pulled him closer until they stood hip to hip. The ritual begins at dawn, she said, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Tonight we rest. Tomorrow you will discover what it truly means to bond with a Valorian warrior. Cole looked down at their joined hands, at the way her bioluminescent patterns seemed to pulse brighter where they touched. I'm looking forward to it, he said, and meant it. Dawn broke over the colony, and Cole woke to find Syrinx already in his quarters. She stood by the window, wearing ceremonial armor that left her arms bare. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsed slowly. The ritual requires us to share space, she said without turning. From this moment until bonding is complete, we do not separate for more than an hour. What's first? Cole asked. She turned, her eyes traveling over him with an assessment that felt intimate. Combat training, Valorian bonding requires partners to fight as one. The training ground was behind the colony's main structures. Amara waited with Kessa, who ran to Cole the moment she saw him. Shield Father, she called, wrapping her arms around his legs. Syrinx moved to the center of the ground, her posture shifting into something predatory. We begin with the basics, watch. She moved, and Cole's training kicked in. He tracked her footwork, the way her shoulders telegraphed her intentions. When she closed the distance, he was already compensating. Her hand stopped a hair's breadth from his throat. Good, you have instincts. Now we refine them. The next hour was in education. Syrinx corrected his stance with touches that lingered, her hands on his hips guiding him, her fingers adjusting his shoulders. Your species relies too much on upper body strength, she said, pressing against his back. Power comes from here. Her hand splayed across his abdomen, and Cole felt heat radiate from her palm. Feel how your center shifts. They continued until the sun was high, their bodies finding a rhythm that felt natural. Enough, Syrinx finally said. We eat. The meal was served in her quarters aboard the flagship. The space was understated but touched with Kessa's presence. Drawings on walls, toys in corners. I did not expect to be a mother, Syrinx said, setting food between them. Kessa's father died in combat before she was born. I have raised her alone. She sat close enough that their knees touched. What about you? What drove you to exile? Cole's jaw tightened. I was Special Forces. Black Operations. We were sent to neutralize a Valorian cell planning attacks on human colonies. He paused. When we got there, we found families, civilians. The intelligence was wrong or fabricated. My commanding officer ordered us to complete the mission anyway, said we couldn't leave witnesses. Syrinx's patterns brightened. You refused. I refused. My team turned on me. They completed the mission and reported me as the one who'd gone rogue. By the time I got back, the story was set. Traitor. Coward. Syrinx reached across and took his hand. Those families lived because of you. That is not deserving of shame. They lived because I failed my team. You succeeded in being human, Syrinx said, heat in her voice. Your team failed that test. She leaned forward, closing the distance until he could feel warmth radiating from her skin. I chose correctly, she said. When I selected you for this bond, I thought it was necessity. But now I see what Kessa saw. You are worthy. Her hand cupped his jaw. The ritual requires physical bonding, not immediately but soon. And if we're not compatible, Cole asked. Syrinx's smile was slow and dangerous. Then we find out together. She kissed him, and it was nothing like Cole expected. Her lips were warm, her mouth tasted sweet, and when her tongue traced his lips, he opened without hesitation. She made a sound low in her throat, and her hand slid to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. Cole's hands found her waist, and Syrinx shifted to straddle his lap without breaking the kiss. The bioluminescent patterns on her arms brightened, pulsing faster. Your wounds, she said against his mouth, but didn't pull away. Don't care, Cole said. Syrinx pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. If we do this now, there is no going back. The bond will begin in truth. Good, Cole said, and pulled her mouth back to his. Syrinx's skin was warmer than human normal, and the patterns on her body brightened in rhythm with her heartbeat. She moved with the same fluid grace she'd shown in combat, channeled into something primal. Cole's hands mapped every inch of skin he could reach. Syrinx gasped when his fingers found a sensitive cluster along her ribs, her head falling back. They moved together, finding a rhythm that felt ancient and new. Cole's wounds protested, but the pain was nothing compared to the heat between them. Syrinx whispered things in her own language, words Cole felt in his bones. When they collapsed together, breathless and tangled, faint traces of bioluminescence marked Cole's chest where they'd touched. What is that? He asked. The beginning of the bond, Syrinx said, her voice rough. It will fade, but each time we connect, it will last longer. Eventually, you will carry permanent marks. Does it bother you? She asked. No, Cole said. It feels right. Syrinx settled against him, her head on his chest. A knock at the door shattered the peace. Commander, Jace's voice came through, urgent. We have a situation. Syrinx was on her feet instantly. Cole followed more slowly. Jace stood there with a datapad, his expression grave. We found something at the Razorback attack site. Evidence of tampering. The creature was drugged and released deliberately. Cole's blood went cold. Someone targeted Kessa. There's more, Jace said. I pulled some old files. Cole, your mission 3 years ago? The intelligence came from Valorian sources, specifically from General Torvan's command structure. He fed your people false information. He wanted those civilians dead, and when you wouldn't do it, he made sure you'd take the fall. The world tilted. Cole braced himself against the doorframe. Torvan has been orchestrating this for years, Syrinx said, her voice deadly quiet. He needs my fleet to restart the war. The bonding contract was arranged through his political allies, but my interference ruined his plans. So he tried to eliminate Kessa, force me into a grief-stricken alliance. But Cole saved her, Jace said. which is why Torvan is desperate to see him fail. Cyrix's patterns flared bright with rage. He will come for us at the final ceremony when we are most vulnerable. He will try to kill us both. Then we'll be ready, Cole said, surprised by how calm he felt. Cyrix moved to him, cupping his face. This changes everything. The bond was supposed to be political protection. Now it is a declaration of war against Torvan and everyone aligned with him. I know, Cole said. Cyrix kissed him again, fierce and claiming. Then let us give him a war he will not survive. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and growing tension. Cole and Cyrix moved through the remaining ritual ceremonies, elaborate dances that tested synchronization, shared meals, meditations where they sat facing each other for hours, learning to read the subtlest shifts in expression and breath. Each ceremony brought them closer. The bioluminescent marks on Cole's skin lasted longer after each intimate encounter, spreading across his chest and shoulders in patterns that mirrored Cyrix's own. At night, wrapped around each other, they spoke in whispers about tactics, about what Torvan might try and how to counter it. Kessa stayed close, her presence a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. On the morning of the final ceremony, Cole woke to find Cyrix already dressed in full ceremonial armor. It was unlike anything he'd seen her wear before. Sleek plates that seemed grown rather than forged, covering vital areas while leaving her arms and the patterns on her skin visible. She was breathtaking. Today we complete the bonding, she said, turning to face him. Or we die trying. Optimistic, Cole said. Cyrix moved to the bed and sat beside him, her hand finding his. Torvan will make his move during the final exchange. It is the moment when we are required to disarm completely. He will see it as the perfect opportunity. So we make sure he doesn't get one, Cole said. Jace has positioned his people throughout the crowd. It will not be enough, Cyrix said quietly. Torvan will have planned for resistance. Cole lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Then we improvise. The ceremony was held in the same plaza where Cyrix had first claimed Cole. Elaborate structures rose on either side, decorated with flowing banners. The crowd was massive. Colonists, Cyrix's troops, and Torvan's people all mixed together in an uneasy assembly. Cole stood at the center with Cyrix, both wearing ceremonial garments. His were simple, fitted pants and a vest that left his arms and the glowing patterns on his chest visible. The marks pulsed in time with his heartbeat, bright enough that even in daylight they were unmistakable. Imara began the ceremony, her voice carrying across the plaza in the melodic cadence of formal Valorian. Cole didn't understand the words, but he felt their weight. Torvan stood at the front of the crowd, flanked by his honor guard. His expression was carefully neutral, but Cole could see the tension in his shoulders. The ceremony progressed through its stages. Cyrix and Cole exchanged vows in both languages, their voices steady. They shared water from a single cup, then blood from shallow cuts on their palms, pressing the wounds together while Imara bound their hands with silk cord. Cole felt something shift when their blood mixed, a warmth that spread up his arm and into his chest, settling near his heart. Cyrix's eyes widened slightly, and he knew she felt it too. The final exchange, Imara announced. The bonded pair must now disarm completely and stand before their people, trusting in the strength of their union to protect them. This was it, the moment Torvan had been waiting for. Cyrix removed her armor piece by piece, setting each component on the platform behind them. Cole stepped forward to stand beside her, both of them exposed and vulnerable before hundreds of watching eyes. Torvan moved. It wasn't obvious at first, just a subtle shift in his position, his hand rising in what could have been a gesture of blessing, but Cole saw the micro-expression that preceded it, the tightening around Torvan's eyes. He threw himself in front of Cyrix as the energy blast tore through the air. The impact hit Cole in the shoulder and spun him sideways. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and consuming, and he hit the platform hard. Through blurred vision, he saw chaos erupt. Torvan's honor guard drew weapons. Cyrix's troops responded instantly, and the plaza became a battlefield in seconds. Cyrix was at Cole's side immediately, her hands on his face. Stay with me, she commanded, but her voice shook. Not going anywhere, Cole managed. Torvan was advancing through the chaos, his guards cutting a path toward the platform. His face was twisted with rage. Syrinx, he called, his voice cutting through the noise. Stand down, this human is not worth a war. He is worth everything, Syrinx shouted back, and her patterns flared so bright they were almost blinding. She stood, and Cole saw something in her he hadn't seen before. Pure, focused fury. This was the commander who'd ended wars. Torvan's guards reached the platform, and Syrinx met them head-on. She moved like liquid death, every strike precise and devastating. One guard went down with a crushed windpipe, another with shattered knees. She disarmed a third and used his own weapon to drop 2 more. But there were too many. Cole forced himself to his feet, his injured shoulders screaming protest. He grabbed a piece of Syrinx's discarded armor and swung it into the face of a guard trying to flank her. Bone crunched, and the guard dropped. Syrinx and Cole fought back to back, moving with the synchronization they'd spent days perfecting. She covered his injured side, and he compensated for the split-second delays in her defense. They were a unit, functioning as one. Jace appeared from the crowd with a squad of Colonial security, engaging Torvan's forces from the flank. The tide began to turn. Torvan saw his plan crumbling. He pushed through his own guards, drawing a curved blade that hummed with energy, and charged directly at Syrinx. Cole moved on instinct. He threw himself into Torvan's path, taking the blade meant for Syrinx across his already injured shoulder. The energy edge cut deep, and Cole felt something fundamental tear inside him. But it gave Syrinx the opening she needed. She struck with open palms, a Valorian killing technique. Both hands impacted Torvan's chest simultaneously, and the general's eyes went wide. He staggered back, blood trickling from his nose and ears, and collapsed. The remaining guards saw their commander fall and hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Syrinx's troops swarmed them, and within seconds the platform was secure. Syrinx caught Cole as his legs gave out, lowering him carefully to the ground. "You fool," she said, but her eyes were bright with tears. "You beautiful, reckless fool. Couldn't let him kill you," Cole said. "Not after I finally found something worth living for." "You are not dying," Syrinx said fiercely. "I forbid it." Imara was there suddenly, her hands already glowing with soft light. "Move aside, Commander. Let me work." Syrinx didn't move, keeping her hands on Cole's face. "The bonding ceremony was not completed," she said. "Without it, the bond may not hold." "Then complete it now," Imara said. "The words have been spoken, the blood mixed, only the final affirmation remains." Syrinx leaned down until her forehead rested against Cole's. "Do you accept this bond?" she whispered. "With everything in my power, do you choose to bind your life to mine?" Cole felt the warmth spreading from where they touched. "I accept," he said. "I choose you, now and always." "Then it is done," Syrinx said, and kissed him. The world exploded into light. Cole felt the bond snap into place like a physical thing, a connection that ran deeper than blood or bone. The patterns on his skin flared brilliant blue, and when Syrinx pulled back, he could see matching marks glowing on her face, following the lines of her cheekbones. The pain in his shoulder began to recede. Imara's healing was working, accelerated by the completed bond. Around them, the plaza was secured. Torvan's remaining forces were being restrained. The coup had failed. Kessa pushed through the crowd and threw herself at both of them, sobbing. "You are okay," she kept saying. "You are both okay." Cole wrapped his good arm around her, feeling Syrinx do the same, and they held each other while the chaos slowly resolved around them. "What happens now?" Cole asked. Syrinx looked around at the aftermath, the damaged plaza, the wounded on both sides, the fragile peace that hung by a thread. "Now," she said, "we build something better." 2 weeks after the failed coup, Cole stood on the observation deck of Syrinx's flagship, watching the colony shrink beneath them as the ship climbed toward orbit. His shoulder still ached where Torvan's blade had cut deep, but Imara's healing had left only a thin scar that intersected with the bioluminescent patterns now permanently marking his skin. The patterns were beautiful, geometric spirals that wound from his chest across his shoulders and down his arms, glowing softly with the same blue light as Syrinx's own markings. They pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and when Syrinx was near, they brightened in response to her presence. The bond was real in ways he still didn't fully understand. He could feel her now, even when they were in different parts of the ship, a warm presence at the edge of his consciousness. Arms wrapped around him from behind, and Syrinx pressed against his back, her chin resting on his shoulder. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "About leaving or about bonding with an alien warrior who comes with a small army and complicated politics?" Cole said. "Because the answer to both is no." Syrinx laughed, the sound still surprising him with how freely it came now. "Jace sent a message," she said. "The Colony Council has officially recognized our union and requested that we serve as liaisons between human and Valorian interests. They also cleared your military record, full reinstatement with honors." Cole was quiet for a moment, processing that. 3 years of exile erased with a few official documents. "I don't think I want to go back," he said finally. "To the military, I mean. That part of my life is over." Syrinx turned him around to face her, her amber eyes searching his. "What do you want?" she asked. Cole looked at her, this fierce, beautiful woman who'd chosen him despite every reason not to, and found the answer was simple. "This," he said. "You, Kessa, whatever comes next as long as we face it together." Syrinx's smile was radiant. "Then you shall have it." She kissed him slow and deep, and Cole felt the bond hum between them like a living thing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "We should go," Syrinx said, though she made no move to step away. "Imara is waiting to perform the blessing ceremony for our quarters, and Kessa has been asking for you all morning." They made their way through the ship's corridors hand in hand, and Cole noted how Syrinx's crew had adapted to his presence. The initial suspicion had given way to acceptance, and now he received nods of respect as they passed. Kessa was waiting in their quarters, a spacious suite that had been modified to accommodate both human and Valorian needs. She bounced up from where she'd been drawing and launched herself at Cole. "Shield Father, look what I made!" She thrust a data pad at him, showing a crude but enthusiastic drawing of him, Syrinx, and Kessa standing together with a small four-legged creature at their feet. "That's beautiful, Kessa," Cole said, crouching down to her level. "Is that a dog?" "Yes, Imara showed me pictures. They are fuzzy and loyal and humans love them. Can we have one, please?" She turned the full force of her pleading eyes on Syrinx, who sighed in the universal language of parents everywhere. "We will discuss it," Syrinx said, which made Kessa squeal with delight. Imara entered the quarters, her robes flowing around her, carrying a ceremonial bowl that gave off soft wisps of fragrant smoke. "Are we ready?" she asked. The blessing ceremony was simpler than the bonding ritual had been. Imara walked the perimeter of their quarters, chanting in Old Valorian while the smoke traced patterns in the air. She anointed their foreheads with oil that smelled of something sweet and earthy, then pressed her palms against their joined hands. "May this space be a sanctuary," she intoned. "May it hold your love through trials and triumphs. May it shelter the family you have chosen and the children who may yet come." Cole felt Syrinx's hand tighten in his at that last part, and he squeezed back. "It is done," Imara said, stepping back. "You are truly home now." After Imara left and Kessa had been convinced to go play in her own room, Cole and Syrinx collapsed onto the large sleeping platform. Syrinx rolled to face him, her hand tracing the patterns on his chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Accepting the bond, leaving everything familiar behind?" "Never," Cole said without hesitation. "I spent 3 years convinced I didn't deserve happiness or purpose. You gave me both." "You gave them to yourself," Syrinx corrected. "When you ran toward that razorback instead of away, I simply recognized what was already there." Cole captured her hand and brought it to his lips. "I love you," he said, the words still feeling new and precious. "I know it's fast, I know we barely know each other, but I love you too," Syrinx interrupted, her voice fierce. "And it is not too fast. My people believe that souls recognize each other instantly. Everything after is just confirmation." lit. She moved closer, closing the distance between them until they were tangled together, all warm skin and synchronized breathing. Cole's hands found the fastenings of her clothing, and Syrinx helped him remove the layers between them with urgent efficiency. What followed was different from their previous encounters. Slower, more deliberate. They mapped each other with hands and mouths, learning what made the other gasp or arch or moan. The bioluminescent patterns on both their bodies flared bright, pulsing in perfect synchronization. When they finally joined, Cole felt the bond sing through him, a connection so deep it was almost overwhelming. He could feel Syrinx's pleasure as if it were his own, could sense the love and trust flowing between them like a current. They moved together, finding a rhythm that was both primal and sacred. Syrinx's fingers dug into his shoulders, and Cole's hands gripped her hips hard enough to leave marks. When they came, it was simultaneously the bond pulling them over the edge together. After they lay wrapped around each other, hearts gradually slowing to match rhythm. "I have been offered a new position," Syrinx said after a long silence. Commander of the Joint Defense Initiative, a combined human and Valorian force designed to prevent conflicts like the one Torvan tried to start. "That's a huge responsibility," Cole said. "It is," Syrinx agreed. "And I want you beside me. Not as my consort, but as my partner, my co-commander. The Council has already approved it, if you accept." Cole propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. "You want me to help lead a military force? I was discharged for insubordination." "You were punished for having principles," Syrinx corrected. "That is exactly the kind of leader we need. Someone who will question orders, who will protect the innocent, who understands that power must be tempered with compassion." Cole thought about it for all of 30 seconds. "Yes," he said, "I accept." Syrinx's smile could have lit the entire ship. "Then we begin tomorrow," she said. "But tonight we celebrate." She kissed him again, and Cole felt the bond flare between them, warm and solid and real. A small voice from the doorway made them both look up. "Are you done being mushy?" Kessa asked, her nose wrinkled. "Because I am hungry, and Imara says we are having Earth food tonight, and I want to try something called pizza." Syrinx laughed and sat up, reaching for her clothing. "We are done being mushy," she said. "For now." Cole pulled on his own clothes and followed them toward the dining area, watching Kessa skip ahead while chattering about all the Earth foods she wanted to try. Syrinx's hand found his, fingers interlacing naturally, and Cole felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. This was family. This was home. This was everything he'd thought he'd lost, returned to him in a form he never could have imagined. The future stretched ahead, uncertain and challenging, full of complications they'd have to navigate together. But as they sat down to dinner, Kessa between them arguing passionately about whether pepperoni or mushrooms were the superior pizza topping, Cole knew they would face it all the same way they'd faced everything else. Together. The bond pulsed warm in his chest, and across the table, Syrinx's patterns flared in response. She smiled at him, and Cole smiled back, and in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be.